Octavia Butler was a groundbreaking African-American science fiction writer born in 1947 in Pasadena, California. Her first novel, Pattern Master, was published in 1976, but her popularity skyrocketed with the novel Kindred, published in 1979. Kindred follows the story of a Black writer who travels back in time to the antebellum South and meets her ancestors, a white plantation owner and a Black slave. It was made into a pretty decent miniseries in 2021. But my favorite Octavia Butler novel is Wild Seed, which is part of the Patternist series, and it has been called the first real novel of Afrofuturism, being the first science fiction novel with an African protagonist. She went on to win Hugo and Nebula Awards and many other awards. Anyway, I want to look at 10 little-known facts about Octavia Butler because I am Daisy Ex Machina, the drag queen detective who investigates all things speculative in science fiction, fantasy, and horror.
Number 10.
Octavia Butler professionally inspected potato chips. I don't know why I think this is funny, I just do. She inspected potato chips. What does that even mean? And how do I get that job? But it was one of many odd jobs she took to support herself through writing. And she would still wake up at 2 a.m. to write before going to work. She preferred really brain-dead jobs like telemarketing and dishwashing and apparently inspecting potato chips, so her mind could focus on her stories. She was an incredibly dedicated and diligent writer. Her advice to writers: first, forget inspiration. Habit is more dependable. Habit will sustain you whether you're inspired or not. Habit will help you finish and polish your stories. Inspiration won't. Habit is persistence and practice.
Number 9.
One of Octavia Butler's inspirations to write was a terrible, awful science fiction movie.
When I was 12, I saw a bad movie called Devil Girl from Mars, and I got into a competition with it. I said, geez, I can write a better story than that. Anybody could write a better story than that. And by then, I had some idea how authors earned a living, and I got busy and tried to write a better story than that. Now, of course, I couldn't, but it actually turned out to be an ancestor of my first book, Pattern Master.
Number 8.
Octavia Butler shared the same quirk as Ray Bradbury. Neither of them ever drove a car. Now, I don't know if she had the same phobia as Bradbury, but she did have dyslexia, which may have had something to do with it. Whatever the case, she loved riding public transportation. She was apparently painfully shy as a child and very reserved as an adult, but on the bus, she would push herself to strike up conversations with other riders. I don't even do that.
Number 7.
Octavia Butler was 6 feet tall by the age of 15, making her stand out and not in a good way. In fact, it probably contributed to her really low self-esteem growing up. I mentioned she had dyslexia. Well, that also contributed to making her schoolwork more difficult. In fact, she called herself ugly and stupid, clumsy, and socially hopeless. But despite that almost debilitating self-image of herself, she went on to become one of the most successful science fiction writers ever.
Number 6.
Octavia Butler was a hoarder of books. When Butler relocated to Lake Forest after her mother died in 1999, she moved 300 boxes of books to her new home. Not 300 books, 300 boxes of books. Her mother was a housekeeper and would bring home tattered copies of books from the homes she cleaned for her daughter. Octavia speculated she may have been genetically predisposed to hoarding. She is quoted as saying, "My big problem is my mother gave me this gene. There must be a gene for it, or several perhaps. It's the pack rat gene, where you just don't throw things out. I haven't thrown books out since I was a kid. I gave some books away when I was a little girl. My mother said I could give some to the Salvation Army. I gave some to a friend, and her brothers and sisters tore them to bits. That was the last time I gave books away in large amounts. I just keep stuff. I still have books from childhood. It comforts me. I imagine when I'm dead, someone will have a huge yard sale or estate sale, and I don't care."
Number 5.
Octavia Butler was mentored by Samuel R. Delany, the African-American science fiction icon who came before her. When she was 23 in 1970, Butler attended the Clarion Science Fiction Workshop, apparently at the urging of Harlan Ellison. If you don't know, Clarion is a really prestigious workshop taught by notable science fiction authors. And many really famous science fiction authors have been Clarion alumni. Anyway, there she met Samuel Delany, who recalls that she was incredibly shy, a student who spoke only when she had something to say, but someone who obviously had great talent. The two remained lifelong friends and often spoke at the same events.
Number 4.
Octavia Butler was an avid reader of comic books. This was before the days of graphic novels. And I wonder if she read comic books as a child because her dyslexia didn't interfere with that format of storytelling. And one of her favorite comic books was The Fantastic Four, and that was my favorite growing up too. I wonder if Butler loved Sue Storm as much as I did. Sue Storm was also known as the Invisible Woman. Butler had the first issue of The Fantastic Four. She said, "I used to collect them, not in the way that people collect things now. I didn't put them in plastic bags and never touched them. I read them and they looked pretty bad, some of them. But they're still worth something just because they are what they are."
Number 3.
Octavia Butler was the only science fiction writer to receive the MacArthur Foundation Genius Grant. The grant is a big deal because it basically hands you $500,000. No questions asked. What's really interesting about this grant is you never know who nominated you, so you don't even know if you are up for the grant. In fact, when Butler got the phone call to congratulate her on winning the grant, she thought it was a scam. Butler also dismissed the term genius grant, saying she was no genius. I think some of us may disagree.
Number 2.
Octavia Butler died mysteriously. Now, there's nothing salacious about this, but it's an enigmatic capstone to her life. She died on February 24, 2006, at the young age of 58. She was walking on a cobbled walkway outside her house when she fell and died. Did the fall kill her? Did she have a stroke that caused her to fall? She did suffer from high blood pressure and hypertension, but the actual cause of death was never certified.
Number 1.
After Butler's death, California's Huntington Library received her papers, and in it was a notebook from 1988 with a page of affirmations. I will buy a beautiful home in an excellent neighborhood. I will send poor Black youngsters to Clarion or other writers' workshops. I will help poor Black youngsters broaden their horizons. I will help poor Black youngsters go to college. I will get the best of health care for my mother and myself. I will hire a car whenever I want to or need to. I will travel whenever and wherever in the world I choose. So be it, so be it. As a footnote, the affirmation to send poor Black youngsters to the Clarion Writers Workshop, it came true. The Octavia E. Butler Memorial Scholarship was set up to annually award writers of color to attend the workshop. So those are the 10 little-known facts about Octavia Butler. One thing I didn't mention was her sexuality, and I thought I was going to include it, but there were articles that claimed she was a lesbian, and she may well have been. But she also never wanted to talk about that aspect of her life. In fact, some things she said seemed to point that Butler may have been asexual, which wasn't much of a topic of discussion during her lifetime, but who knows? Let's just let it be. What we do know is that she was a fantastic author. One of her Nebula Award-winning books, Parable of the Talents, published in 1998, is said to have predicted Donald Trump. Anyway, like I said, Wild Seed is my favorite Octavia Butler book. Let me know down in the comments which is your favorite. And while you're there, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Also, let me know other speculative fiction authors you may want to know more about. Until we meet again, may all the books you read be blessed.